Have you ever made one simple choice that changed your entire life? She walked into that office, hoping for a job, wearing borrowed shoes, carrying an outdated resume, trying to stay calm in a world that never made space for women like her. But instead of an interview, the CEO looked her in the eyes and asked, "Will you marry me? No games, no warning, just a quiet man with too much power, and a secret that tied both their pasts together. If you were her, would you stay and listen or walk away, knowing this might be the one door life will never open again?" This is not a fairy tale. It is a story about surviving shame, choosing truth, and learning how to stop running. Come closer. This is where healing begins. Claire Bennett stood outside the Bright Core building, staring up at its glass facade. The morning sun reflected off the windows like polished silver, casting long shadows across the sidewalk. The wind pulled gently at the hem of her navy skirt. Her hands, buried deep in the pockets of her light coat, trembled just slightly. She told herself it was from the chill, but it was not. Her heart was thudding, not racing, not panicking, just steady thudding, the kind that comes with uncertainty, wrapped in fragile hope. The receptionist was kind, but distracted. Claire signed in, waited 10 minutes on a low couch that smelled faintly of leather and lemon, and tried to smooth the creases in her blouse with the edge of her palm. She had chosen this outfit carefully, not to impress, but to survive. Professional, modest, clean. When the assistant finally returned, Claire stood immediately, bracing herself. "You are Claire Bennett?" the woman asked. Her voice was smooth, practiced, her posture perfect. "Yes, the CEO will see you now." Claire blinked. "I thought this was a screening interview. With HR." The woman offered only a polite smile. "Mr. Whitmore prefers to be hands-on with certain positions." Hands-on. Strange choice of words. Claire followed her through a corridor lined with framed patents, investment awards, and minimalist decor. Everything inside this building whispered of precision. Clean lines, no clutter, no warmth. Like wealth that never needed to say its name aloud. The elevator hummed as it ascended. Floor 39, then 40. Her reflection in the mirror-like walls looked calm, but she felt like she was walking into something bigger than she understood. When the doors opened, the assistant stepped out and gestured toward a glass door with a brass handle. "In here," she said. Then, without another word, she walked away. Claire stood still for a breath, then another, and then she walked in. The office was quiet, spacious, but not sterile. There were shelves of books, not just finance or leadership, but novels, even poetry. A painting of a boat in rough water hung behind the desk, and there, in the middle of it all, stood a man with sleeves rolled, no tie, staring out the window. He turned. His eyes found hers instantly. That was the moment everything stopped. He did not smile. He did not walk forward. He just looked at her like someone who had been expecting a stranger and got a memory instead. "Mr. Whitmore," she said quietly. "I am Claire, here for the secretary position." He nodded once, then said nothing for several seconds. She shifted her weight. Her shoes suddenly felt too tight. "Please," he said finally. "Sit down." She did. So did he. And then he said something she would never forget. "Claire, would you ever consider marrying someone like me?" Silence. Claire did not laugh, did not flinch. She simply froze. The question hung in the air like a thread between them, too fragile to touch, too heavy to ignore. "I am sorry," she said. He leaned forward, calm, certain. I asked if you would marry me. Claire stared at him. You do not know me. I know enough, he replied, and I trust what I feel. Claire stood. I came here for a job, not this. I understand. Do you? Enough to offer you something else. 30 days. That is all I ask. Be around. Not as a wife, not even as a girlfriend. Just here. Let me see if this feeling means something. Claire walked to the door. Her hand touched the handle, but she did not pull. Why me? His voice softened. Because I have spent years building something strong. But the moment you walked in, I felt something real. I do not want to miss it, even if I cannot explain it. Claire stood there, caught between logic and a voice inside her that had not spoken in a long time. Hope, not loud, just there. I need time, she said. Take it. She left without saying goodbye. The air outside felt colder than before. That night, she sat in her small apartment, staring at the ceiling. The fridge hummed, the heater clicked, and the question echoed again in her mind. Would you ever consider marrying someone like me? Claire sat at the edge of her twin mattress, back straight, hands clasped in her lap. The apartment was quiet, except for the low rumble of a city bus passing outside. The kitchen light flickered once, then stilled. A pile of unpaid bills rested on the corner of the table, held down by a chipped coffee mug. This was not the life she planned, but it was the one she had built, piece by uncertain piece. She glanced at the business card lying on the windowsill. Grant Whitmore, Brightcore Capital. Her fingers itched to throw it away. Instead, she picked it up and held it under the light. What kind of man asked someone to marry him during an interview? More importantly, what kind of woman stood there, thinking about it days later? Claire sighed and reached for the small photo frame beside her bed. It held an old picture of her mother, smiling through a soft breeze on a summer day in Baton Rouge. The edges of the photo had begun to curl. Her mother had always believed in starting over. Claire had once believed in it too, until everything fell apart. She had been 21 when her father was indicted. A man known for charming investors and weekend barbecues was suddenly plastered across every news channel, linked to a string of fraudulent deals that had wrecked dozens of families. When the storm hit, Claire did not speak to anyone. She packed 2 suitcases, dropped out of Tulane University, and left New Orleans in the middle of the night. She changed her last name, took her mother's maiden name, Bennett, and never looked back. But no matter how far she moved, the past always found a crack to slip through. In Austin, she had found a new rhythm. Not easy, but steady. She worked temp jobs, answered phones, filed papers, smiled at strangers, and kept her head down. She visited her mother twice a month, bringing flowers and tea. They talked about birds, books, and sometimes about nothing. Her mother never asked about her father, neither did Claire. It was easier that way. 3 months ago, a local clinic had called. Her mother had collapsed during her morning walk. They used words like early stage, aggressive, and we need to begin treatment right away. Claire nodded, then hung up. Since then, everything had been about survival, groceries in bulk, rent on time, overtime if she could get it, no new shoes, no cafe visits, no birthday plans, just numbers, and now, somehow. Grant Whitmore had interrupted that fragile balance. She had looked him up after the interview. There was not much to find. For a billionaire, Grant kept a low profile. He rarely gave interviews. He did not attend flashy events. He had no public social media. A few old magazine articles hinted at a tragic past. His wife, Marianne, had died in a private plane crash 6 years earlier. He had not been seen with another woman since, until now. Claire tossed the card onto the table and stood. She opened the window, letting in the cool air. The trees outside rustled, their leaves golden and tired. She thought about the offer. 30 days, no strings, just be present, be seen, be remembered. The last time someone had looked at her like she mattered, she had been with someone named Logan, a musician with charm, fast hands, and an empty future. He had filled her head with promises and left her with unpaid rent and a heart too tired to be angry. Since then, Claire had built herself into something quieter. She did not believe in lightning, but she did believe in intuition. And her gut, for the first time in years, whispered something other than fear. Still, she needed clarity. She pulled out a notebook from her drawer. She used it only when she needed to think. On one side, she wrote, "Do not go. He is a stranger. You have too much to lose. You are not ready. It could all fall apart." On the other side, "Go. You need help. You need answers. Maybe this means something." She stared at the list, then closed the notebook. The next morning, Claire returned to the Bright Core Tower. The same assistant greeted her with a polite nod. "He is expecting you." She did not speak during the elevator ride. This time, when she stepped into the office, Grant stood. He had not changed. Same rolled sleeves, same calm posture, same searching eyes. But something in his face softened when he saw her. "You came," he said. "I have questions. I expected that." They sat across from each other again. This time, no job titles, no scripts, only honesty. "What happens after 30 days, she asked. "You walk away. Or you do not. That part is yours. And during you will see my world. I will see yours. We keep it quiet." No cameras. No pretending. Claire looked down. "My mother is ill," she said. "I cannot afford drama. You will not have to. I promise." She believed him. Not because of his words, but because he did not try to sell them. He just offered them. Like an open hand. "I need it in writing. Already done. Legal. Signed. Bound. Fine," Claire said. 30 days. No expectations. No games. Grant nodded. Then, quietly, "Thank you." Grant Whitmore watched the elevator doors close behind Claire. He stood still for a moment, then walked slowly to the window. Below, the city stretched in quiet lines. Traffic moved in calm waves. Buildings stood tall, indifferent and precise. He exhaled, and then he sat. There were things people assumed about him, that he was cold, that he was brilliant, that he had no heart left to break. Some of it was true, but the rest was simply silence no one had ever bothered to ask about. He did not grow up rich. His father was a mechanic. His mother worked night shifts at a hospital. They raised him in a house that smelled of engine oil and old paperback novels. He built Brightcore from a garage in his 20s, not because he had a vision, but because he had nothing to lose. His first investor was a friend. That friend pulled out 6 months later, leaving him near collapse. Grant did not quit. He pivoted. He learned fast that power was not given. It was taken, quietly, with clean hands and sharp eyes. By 32, he had made his first 100 million. But no one talked about what he lost along the way. Not even him. When Marianne died, the world assumed he would rebuild. That a man like him did not stop for grief. They were wrong. He stopped everything. No public interviews, no new ventures, no noise, just work. And the quiet kind of pain that grew roots. He lived in a penthouse he barely decorated, slept in a room too large, ate dinner alone. He did not date. He did not explain. Some people said he had turned bitter. He had not. He had simply turned inward. Until Claire walked in, she was not polished, not perfectly dressed. Her heels did not match her bag. Her voice trembled slightly when she spoke, but her eyes were steady. She looked at him like he was a person, not a title, not a ticket, a man. And for a moment, something cracked. He could not explain it. He did not try. That was not how he lived. Grant was not impulsive. He never made decisions without reason. But this was different. This was instinct. Something old inside him recognized something quiet inside her. He had felt this only once before, years ago. A fleeting moment. A voice in the back of a room. A question from a young woman that pierced through his perfectly rehearsed speech. She had asked, "Do you ever get lonely at the top?" Everyone else laughed. He had not. He had looked for her after, but she was gone. He never forgot the question. And when Claire walked in days ago, a thread pulled tight in his chest, same voice, same pause, same weight behind her words. He could not say for sure if it was her, but he felt something. And after years of numbness, feeling anything at all was like breathing after a long dive. He knew how it sounded, ridiculous. But he also knew what silence had cost him. So he offered her 30 days, not because he wanted to own her time, but because he needed to understand why she made him feel alive again, and because she looked like someone who had forgotten what it meant to be seen. That mattered. People thought he chased numbers. The truth was, he was chasing meaning. Now he watched her step back into his world with careful eyes and guarded steps. He would not rush her. He would not corner her. He would let her choose. And if 30 days passed and she walked away, he would thank her anyway. Because for the first time in years, he looked forward to something. Even if it had no name yet, even if it had no future, sometimes the smallest crack is all it takes for light to come in. The first morning of the agreement began without ceremony. No champagne, no grand gestures, just a black car waiting outside the apartment of Claire. The driver stood beside it. He wore a dark coat and held a name card with both hands. His silence made the moment feel heavier than it was meant to. Claire hesitated by the door. She glanced once at the hallway, then back at the car. She wore her most neutral dress, pale blue, ironed the night before. Her bag was light. Her mind was not. The ride to the house of Grant passed in silence. Claire sat still. The window showed her a different part of Austin. Trees lined the streets. Wide driveways replaced narrow alleys. Wealth was quiet here. It did not shout. It simply existed. The house appeared behind a tall line of trees. It did not sparkle or tower. It sat back from the road, made of wood, glass, and stone. It looked like it was built to disappear. When the car stopped, Grant stood waiting at the entrance. He wore no suit, just a gray sweater and dark jeans. He held 2 mugs. "Good morning," he said. Claire stepped out and nodded once. "This feels odd." He handed her one of the mugs. "That makes 2 of us." They walked through the side garden and sat on the back porch. The trees whispered above them. A single deer stepped into the clearing, paused, then vanished into the woods. No one spoke for a while. Then Claire cleared her throat. "Do you have a plan for me?" Grant shook his head. "Not exactly. Just a calendar. Some meetings. A few dinners. Optional." She raised one eyebrow. No obligations, he said again. Only invitations. Claire sipped the coffee. It was dark and smooth. She hated that she liked it. I need to be clear about a few things. I agree. I keep my place. I come and go when I want. No media, no interviews, no public claims. All of that is already written. No assumptions, she said. No romantic pressure. You have my word. Grant stood and stepped inside. He returned a minute later with a folder. Claire opened it. The contract was simple, straightforward, 30 days. She would be free to decline any event. Her name would not be used publicly. She could leave at any point. There was a stipend, $10,000. It was listed as compensation for time, not as salary, not as gift. Claire stared at the number. You planned this, she said. Grant looked her in the eye. I prepared for your doubt. I will need a day. You have it. She left the folder on the kitchen table of her apartment that night. It stayed there while she made tea. It stayed there while she watched the street from her window. It stayed there while she lay in bed, staring at the ceiling fan spinning above her. By morning, she signed it. The next few days passed quietly. Claire met Grant at 2 business meetings. Each time, he introduced her simply, no titles, no expectations. He did not touch her, did not lead her around. He walked beside her. That was all. She noticed how people watched him, not just with respect, but with a strange kind of distance. He made decisions quickly, spoke with care, but always left room for no one. Except now. Now. They glanced at her too. One evening, they attended a private dinner hosted by a local nonprofit. Claire wore a dark green dress loaned by her neighbor. It was one of the few things that made her feel like she belonged. Grant stayed near, but not too close. He spoke to people, laughed softly, poured his own drink. At one point, a woman with flawless makeup leaned toward Claire. You are the girl, right? She asked. Claire kept her voice calm. I am not sure what you mean. The one everyone is guessing about. Claire said nothing. Good, the woman said. Silence is smart. Later, in the car, Grant looked over at her. Did she bother you? No. You are allowed to say yes. Claire looked away. I am used to being misunderstood. He said nothing more, but that silence felt like it meant something. One night, Claire woke just before dawn. She did not remember the dream, only that her hands were clenched and her throat dry. She sat at the edge of the bed. The room was still. She reached for her notebook and wrote only 3 words. What if not? She did not explain it, even to herself. Later that morning, she found a box on her doorstep. Inside, a small plant in a clay pot. It had soft leaves and a note. This one likes quiet mornings and a bit of shade, just like you. There was no name, but she knew. She placed it near the window. She whispered, Try to grow. I will try too. She did not know if she meant it for the plant or herself. The car pulled up to the side entrance of the gala just after sunset. Lights danced across the windows. The soft sound of a jazz trio spilled out as the doors opened. People moved in silk and shadow. Laughter layered over quiet suspicion. Claire sat still for a moment. The driver opened the door. She stepped out slowly. The dress she wore had come in a box that morning. No note, just a card that read 7 sur sharp. It was deep blue, modest, elegant, a fabric that whispered rather than shouted. Grant waited near the entrance. He wore a black suit, no tie. His hands were in his pockets. When he saw her, something shifted in his eyes. Not desire, not surprise, just softness. You came, he said. You asked, she replied. Inside, the room was warm with candlelight, tables lined the edges, and tall glasses glimmered with champagne. Waiters moved without sound. Claire stayed close to Grant, but not too close. She nodded politely, smiled when needed. She did not speak much. The first hour passed quietly. She caught fragments of conversations. Names of cities, names of funds, words like leverage, climate impact, projected returns. None of it meant much to her. Then someone said her name. Not out loud, but she heard it. A pair of women standing near the balcony whispered behind half-covered smiles. Claire turned away. Near the dessert table, a tall woman approached. Her dress was crimson, her smile sharp. Evelyn Thatcher, she said, holding out a hand. Claire accepted it. Claire. I know, Evelyn said. Grant appeared at Claire's side almost too quickly. Evelyn, he said with a tight nod. So it is true, she replied, eyes never leaving Claire. You brought someone to a public event. Grant's voice remained calm. We are not here for gossip. No, Evelyn said. We never are. But somehow, it always finds us. Claire excused herself and stepped outside onto the balcony. The air was cooler than she expected. A breeze lifted strands of her hair. She rested her hands on the stone railing and tried to breathe. Below, the city stretched wide and silent. She did not hear the footsteps behind her. You handled her well, Grant said. Who is she? Marianne's cousin. Claire turned. Your wife? Grant nodded. She never liked surprises. And I am a surprise. To all of us. Claire looked down at her shoes. They are watching me. Yes. Judging me. Yes. She faced him fully. Are you... Grant met her gaze. No. She nodded once. Slowly. Then looked out again. Why did you bring me? Because I wanted you here. To prove something. To feel something. He said it so simply. Claire blinked. I do not belong in this world. Neither do I. She almost laughed. You built it. I built the walls, he said. Not the truth inside them. Later that night, back at her apartment, Claire found a message on her phone. It had no name, just a question. Why you? She stared at it. She had no answer. The next morning, Grant waited for her outside a small cafe near his office. Claire sat across from him, stirring her tea without drinking it. Someone messaged me, she said. He looked up. What did they say? Nothing, but it was enough. Do you want me to trace it? You can do that. I can do many things. Claire looked out the window. No, not yet. Grant was quiet for a while. Then he said, This was bound to happen. I know. But I had hoped it would not. So did I. Claire paused. You said I could leave any time. I did. I am not ready, but I need to know. She hesitated. Am I safe? Grant answered without delay. Yes, with me. You are. The first article dropped just after noon. Claire was in the elevator at Brightcore, heading up to meet Grant for a lunch meeting. Her phone buzzed once, then again, then 4 times in a row. She stepped out onto the 39th floor and checked the screen. The headline was short. Claire Bennett. Who is she really under it? A photo from years ago. Long hair, a younger face, different name, the name she had left behind. Claire did not walk into the meeting room. She turned into the hallway, found a quiet corner near the windows, and stood still. Her hands shook. The article was vague. It mentioned no charges, no scandal, just speculation. But it named her former identity. It listed her hometown. It showed a blurred image of her father in handcuffs. It was enough. Grant found her 5 minutes later. He did not ask questions. He simply handed her a bottle of water and waited. Claire took a sip, then looked at him. "You knew," she said. "Yes," he replied. "How long?" "Since day 3. She nodded. "Why did you not say anything?" "Because you had not." She stared out the window. "People think I am lying." "I do not." Claire looked at him. "Why not?" "Because liars build walls," he said. "You walk through them." She felt her breath steady. Just a little. Grant handed her his phone. His legal team had already begun sending requests for retractions. A privacy order was being prepared, but Claire knew better. Once a name was out, it did not go back in. That night, Claire sat on the floor of her apartment. The lights were off. The city outside moved like nothing had changed. But everything had. The old name, her real name, felt like a stone dropped into still water. Ripples touched everything. Her mother called and left a voicemail. "Are you okay?" She did not answer. She stared at the plant by her window. Its leaves had started to lean toward the sun. "A quiet survivor," Claire whispered. "I do not want to run again." But she did not know if she could stay. The next morning, she returned to the house of Grant. He met her in the kitchen. No questions, just coffee. "I need to tell you everything," she said. "You do not have to." "I do." They sat at the table. Claire spoke slowly. She told him about the trial, the headlines, the friends who vanished, the neighbors who stopped waving. She told him about leaving Tulane, the cheap bus ticket, the borrowed name, the months of silence. She told him about the job at the grocery store, the landlord who gave her a break, the feeling of being hunted, even when no one was chasing her. Grant listened. He did not interrupt. When she finished, she looked at him. "So now you know?" He nodded. "I already did." Claire blinked. "I saw the file when we checked your background. It was flagged because of the name change. Nothing illegal. Just unusual." "Why did you still let me in?" Grant placed his hands flat on the table. "Because I was not hiring a secretary." "You were hiring Hope." "No," he said. "I was offering mine." Later that day, someone sent Claire another message. This one had no words, just a photo. It showed her walking with Grant after the gala, his hand on her back. Her laughing at something. The angle was wrong, the lighting dark, but the message was clear. Someone was watching. Claire blocked the number, but her heart would not stop racing. She returned to her apartment early that evening. The hallway was quiet. Inside, the room was warm with fading sunlight. She sat on the couch and waited. For fear, for anger, for something. But nothing came, only a quiet kind of strength, one that had taken years to grow. She picked up her phone and called Grant. He answered on the first ring. "I am still here," she said. "I know." For the first time in 2 weeks, Claire did not wake to the sound of her phone. No new messages, no headlines, no anonymous whispers in the dark. Just sunlight pressing through the thin curtains and the soft breath of silence. She stayed in bed longer than usual. The room felt unfamiliar in its stillness. Later that morning, she met Grant for breakfast at the garden table behind his house. The sky was pale, the breeze light. They ate in quiet. Claire stirred her oatmeal. Grant sipped his coffee. He was the first to speak. "You have been quiet. I am tired." "Of what?" "Of wondering when the next hit will come." He nodded once. Then, "I can make it stop." Claire looked up. "No, you can try. But not everything can be solved." Grant held her gaze. "And if I cannot fix it, then maybe it is not yours to fix. After breakfast, they walked along the edge of the woods. Grant explained the names of the trees. He had planted some of them years ago, long before he was famous. He remembered where every stone had come from, which gardener had left which trail of footprints in the dirt. Claire listened. She asked about one tree with crooked roots. That one was damaged in a storm, Grant said, but it still grew. Yes, bent, but stronger. Claire touched the bark. That feels familiar. That afternoon, Claire met with her mother at a small medical clinic on the edge of town. They sat outside, under a tree that dropped brittle leaves into their laps. "You look different," her mother said. "Older. Calmer." Claire smiled, but it faded quickly. "They found out. About your father. About me." Her mother nodded slowly. "And what happened? Nothing. Not yet. Then maybe that is a beginning, not an end." Claire looked at her mother. "You are not disappointed." Her mother shook her head. "You chose your name. You chose your silence. That takes more strength than most people know." Later that evening, Claire returned to the house of Grant. He was in his study, reading. She stood at the door. He looked up. "You look like you are carrying something," he said. "I am—" She stepped inside. "I need to ask you something, and I need the truth. Anything. If I had told you everything from day one, would we be here right now?" He did not answer right away. Claire waited. He stood, walked to the window, then said softly, "I do not know." She closed her eyes. "That is what I was afraid of. It is not about you," he added. "It is about who I was back then. I might not have listened. I might have been too proud." Claire leaned against the bookshelf. "And now I cannot imagine a version of this story without you in it." She looked at him. "But you still doubt me?" "No," he said. "I doubt myself." That night, they sat on the porch. Neither of them spoke for a long time. Then Claire said, "It is strange. What is—" "Feeling safe, but not certain." Grant turned toward her. "I cannot promise certainty, but I can promise I will not walk away." Claire nodded. She wanted to believe that. She really did. But something in her still waited for the door to close. The next morning, Claire left a note on the kitchen counter. She needed space, just one day, to think, to breathe. She walked the city alone, no destination. She bought coffee from a stand in the park, sat on a bench near the water, watched children chase pigeons, an old man feed ducks. No one looked at her. She was invisible again, and somehow that was a kind of comfort. She opened her notebook and wrote a single sentence. "What if we are only brave until we fall in love?" That evening. She returned. The house was quiet. A lamp was left on in the hallway. She found Grant in the kitchen. He did not ask where she had gone. He only said, "You are home?" And she was, but neither of them said it aloud. It began with a knock, sharp, unhurried. 3 times. Claire looked up from the book she was reading on the couch. The house was quiet. Grant was upstairs, still on a call with his legal team. She set the book down. Another knock, slower this time. She crossed the room and opened the door halfway. A man stood there, dark jacket, neatly combed hair, clean-shaven, a face she once knew too well. He smiled. "Hello, Claire." She froze. The name hit her like cold water. He continued, "I thought we could talk." She stepped back, but did not open the door any wider. "Aiden?" He nodded once. "I heard about the new arrangement, about you and the man behind all those buildings." Her voice was steady. "You should not be here. I just want a few minutes. No. He placed his hand on the doorframe. Claire, please. Something in his tone, still familiar, still calculated, made her hand tighten on the knob. Before she could answer, another voice spoke behind her. Step away from the door. Grant stood at the end of the hallway. No suit, just a gray shirt, barefoot, calm, but his voice left no room for discussion. Aiden looked over Claire's shoulder. So you are him. Grant said nothing. Claire closed the door halfway again. Her voice was low. You need to leave. Right now. Aiden shrugged. Fine. But he should know what you left behind. Then he turned and walked down the path, disappearing into the trees. Claire shut the door. Her body trembled. Grant stepped closer. Are you okay? No. She did not move. That was him, she said. The one I told you about. Grant nodded slowly. I thought he might show up. We had someone watching his trail, but he went quiet last week. Claire looked at him. You were watching him. Since the article came out, we did not want to worry you. She sat down on the edge of the couch. Her voice cracked. You should have told me. I thought I was protecting you. I do not need protection, she whispered. I need honesty. He sat beside her. I am sorry. They sat in silence. Then Claire spoke again. I do not know what he wants, but it is never just one visit. Grant nodded. He will not get close again. I promise. Claire looked out the window. You cannot promise that. The next day, Claire returned to her apartment. She had not been back in over a week. The rooms were still. Her coffee mug still sat on the counter. The plant near the window had grown taller. She turned on the radio, let it play low. The knock from the night before echoed in her memory. She had run before, changed cities, changed names, but now she felt too tired to run again. She picked up her phone and called Carla. Her old roommate answered on the second ring. You okay? Carla asked. No, but I am trying. They talked for 10 minutes. Then Claire asked, Do you still have that key? The one you kept just in case? Of course. Can you bring it tomorrow? Claire, are you leaving again? No, Claire said. This time, I am staying. That night, she returned to the house of Grant. He met her at the door. You do not have to explain, he said, but I want to. They sat on the back steps. The stars were visible through the trees. Claire took a breath. Aiden made me feel like nothing, and I believed him. For too long. Grant listened. He never hit me, she continued, but he broke things. My confidence, my sense of worth. He used silence as a weapon. He made me think I imagined the bad parts. Her voice trembled, but she did not stop. I lost myself, trying to keep him calm. Grant reached for her hand, and then one day, I left. No warning, just left everything. It was not brave. It was desperate. It was both, he said. Claire looked at him. I need you to know this part of me. I already do. Later that week, a letter arrived. No return address, handwritten, no threat, just 4 words. You owe me closure. Claire held it in both hands. She did not cry. She did not reply. She burned it on the porch. Grant stood beside her, watching the flame disappear. Is it over now? He asked. Claire looked at the smoke curling into the trees. No, but it is not beginning again either. The podium felt taller than it should have. Claire stood behind it. Her hands rested on both sides. Her palms were cold, but her voice was steady. A few feet away, reporters adjusted cameras and tested their microphones. Some looked bored, some looked curious, a few looked hungry. Behind Claire, Grant stood in silence. He had offered to speak first. She had declined. This was her story, not his. The night before, they sat on the couch. Grant had read the final statement she had written. He folded the paper and handed it back. "You do not owe them anything," he said. "I know," Claire replied, "but I owe something to myself." Now, in the still air of the conference room, she looked up. "My name is Claire Bennett," she began. "I know that name may not be the one you have read about, and I know some of you may already have your opinions. That is all right." She paused. "I am not here to erase the past. I am here to reclaim it." The room grew quiet. Cameras clicked. Pens stopped moving. "I spent years living behind another name, not to deceive, but to survive. I left a town that only remembered my father's mistake. I left a version of myself that believed I did not deserve peace. And I built a life, slowly, piece by piece, with no spotlight, no handouts." She took a breath. "Then I met someone, not because I was looking, but because life, sometimes, is strange and inconvenient and unexpectedly kind." A soft ripple moved through the crowd. "That someone is standing behind me today, not as my defense, not as my answer, but as someone who reminded me that silence is not always strength, and truth, when spoken aloud, can become a kind of freedom. I was never looking for a billionaire," she said. "I was looking for a place to rest. And now, I am done running." Grant did not speak that day. He did not need to. He stood with his arms crossed, watching as Claire stepped off the stage. When she reached him, he whispered only 2 words. "You stayed." She nodded. "And now?" "I speak." That evening, they walked in the garden, no phones, no shoes, just the path of stones and the soft light from the porch. "You were brave today," Grant said. "I was shaking," Claire replied. "That is why it counts." She looked up at him. "Are you afraid?" He smiled faintly. "Every day." "Of what?" "That you will wake up and realize you deserve more than this." Claire took his hand. "And if I do, then I will still choose you, even if I lose you." The next morning, headlines changed. Not all, but some. Claire Bennett speaks out. From silence to strength. Not a scandal, a survivor. The comments were mixed, some kind, some cruel. But Claire did not read them. Not anymore. She went back to work. Not for Grant. For herself. She met with the Bright Core community team. They offered her a formal role, project lead, no strings, no press. She accepted. Her first project, a mentorship program for women starting over, not as charity, as community. 2 weeks later, she held her first meeting. 10 women showed up. Each carried something silent. Some wore it in their eyes, some in their posture. Claire stood at the front of the room. She told them who she was and who she had been. She did not cry. She did not hide. And when she finished, no one clapped. They did not need to. They just sat there, still, listening. It was enough. That night, back at home, Grant poured 2 mugs of tea. They sat on the couch. The windows were open. Claire leaned against his shoulder. He asked, "Do you regret any of it?" She thought for a long moment. "Yes, but not enough to undo it." He nodded. Then he reached into his pocket, a small velvet box. Claire blinked. "Is that what I think it is?" "No," he said. "It is not a proposal. Not yet." She opened it. Inside was a silver ring. No diamond, no gem. Just simple, warm. "Then, what is it?" He smiled. A promise that I will walk with you wherever you go next. Claire held the ring in her hand. She said nothing, but the silence felt like everything. Spring arrived without asking for attention. It came in soft winds and warm mornings, in the way light filtered through kitchen windows, and how the trees near the house of Grant grew new leaves like small green promises. Claire stood barefoot on the back porch, holding a mug of tea in both hands. She wore a sweatshirt too big and hair that did not care to be styled. She was not waiting for anything. She was simply breathing. Behind her, Grant opened the screen door. Still no board meetings today, she asked. Without turning, he stepped beside her. They survived one morning without me. Miracles do happen. She smiled. He sipped from his own mug. They stood in silence, not awkward, not expectant, just still. Later that day, Claire drove to the community center. Her group had grown. Now 15 women, different ages, different stories, but all starting over. She did not teach them. She sat with them, listened, and when one of them asked, "When does it stop hurting?" Claire answered without pretending. "Some days, it still does, but it no longer owns me." That weekend, Grant took her to the house in the hills, the one she had never seen. He parked the car, but left the key in the ignition. Claire stepped out and looked around. It was simple. Wood siding, a front porch, a rocking chair that moved slightly in the breeze. Inside, it smelled like cedar and lemon. He had filled it with books, plants, a writing desk near a window. "This is yours," he said. Claire turned to him. "I thought you said this was ours." He shook his head. "This one is yours, for when you need space, or silence, or just a place to be no one for a while." She walked through the rooms. In the kitchen, on the counter, sat a single envelope. No name, just a sticker shaped like a small star. She opened it. Inside, a note written in his handwriting. "Not every home is built with walls. Some are built when someone finally says, 'Stay.'" They spent the night on the porch. No champagne, no music, just cocoa and stars. Claire leaned against Grant's shoulder. "Do you still think it was fate?" she asked. "No." She looked up. "Then what do you think it was?" He thought for a long moment, then said, "A series of small choices. Yours, mine, each one harder than the last. And somehow, we made enough of the right ones." She nodded. "That sounds less romantic, but more real." She touched his hand. "I do not need a ring, or a wedding. I know. But if I ever change my mind," he smiled, "I will already be waiting." A few months later, Claire published her first story. Not in a big paper, not on television, just a small website for survivors. Anonymous by choice. The title read, "The Girl Who Stopped Running." Under it, only one sentence stood alone before the story began. "I thought healing would be louder. But maybe it sounds like peace." At a cafe downtown, someone recognized her. A young woman, late 20s, nervous eyes. "Excuse me," she said softly. "Are you?" Her Claire did not pretend. "I am." The girl nodded. "I read your story. It made me feel less alone." Claire smiled. Then it was worth sharing. The girl turned to leave, but paused. "Do you still get scared?" Claire answered gently, "Yes, but I no longer live in fear. I live in truth." On a quiet Sunday, Grant asked, "If you could go back to that interview day, would you do anything differently?" Claire laughed softly. "Maybe wear better shoes." He chuckled. "And you?" "I would still ask." Even without knowing how it would end, he looked at her. "I did not care how it ended. I just needed to begin. In the final days of summer, Claire stood at the edge of a lake near the Hill House. The water was still, the air warm. She closed her eyes and whispered, "I am still me, but I am no longer who I was." Behind her, Grant waited, not to fix, not to save, just to walk beside her. And this time, she did not walk alone. She walked forward. Sometimes, the hardest thing is not surviving what life throws at us. It is learning how to live again, when the noise quiets down, when the shame has faded, but the memory still lingers. Claire did not find peace in success. She found it when she stopped hiding. She did not need saving. She needed space to become herself. And Grant, he did not fix her past. He simply stayed long enough for her to face it without fear. We all carry parts of ourselves we wish we could erase. Old names, old wounds, moments we never told anyone. But healing does not ask for perfection. It only asks that we stop running and begin walking with truth. Maybe that is the lesson here. No matter how late it feels, no matter how heavy the story has become, there is still time to tell it, and someone, somewhere, is waiting to listen. Thank you for spending time with this story. If it touched your heart, even just a little, please give it a like. Share it with someone who may need it. And do not forget to subscribe for more stories that speak to the quiet places in all of us. Your support means more than you know. We will see you in the next one.